Well, we did it. The channel hit another milestone as we reached 700 subscribers. Feels like only yesterday I was thanking you guys for helping me reach 600 subscribers, so I'll try not to repeat myself, but again, I want to thank you all for your continued support. I love making videos and talking about games I love, and the support for the channel has been truly heartwarming. I can't thank you all enough. This is honestly just a fun hobby for me right now. But I do work a lot on these videos, so to see so many people liking and having your comments of support has been something I look forward to with each and every upload. Thank you all so much, and I hope you enjoy today's video. Bioshock 2 has always been a game I look back on with the fondest memories. Yes, the original Bioshock truly affected and changed the gaming industry, and Bioshock 2 is just more of it. But that's okay. Seeing Rapture again was never going to have that same punch. The story was always going to be put under a microscope because of the brilliance of the first game. And I mean, how do you one-up a Big Daddy as an enemy? You can nitpick Bioshock 2 until you're blue in the face because of the lack of change from Bioshock. But I loved Bioshock, and Bioshock 2 for me only added further intrigue for this world. At least that's what I remember. Nostalgia can be a funny thing after all. So let's see how it holds up today. In this video, I'll be going over Bioshock 2's development, story, gameplay, and the DLC Minerva's Den. I won't be covering the game's previously existing multiplayer for obvious reasons, or the protected trials because, well, I don't really feel like playing it. As always, time codes are in the description below for your convenience. Let's not beat around the bush here. The first Bioshock is one of the most critically acclaimed games of all time, and commercially did amazing. The biggest change to development is, well, the studio. 2K Boston, or Irrational Games, produced the original game, but Bioshock 2 was developed primarily by 2K Marin, with the help of various other 2K studios. The reason for this change was due to the creator of the original game, Ken Levine, and many of the members of the team at then 2K Boston felt they had said what they wanted to say about the world of Rapture, and wanted to avoid repeating themselves. Several members of 2K Boston though felt differently as they left the studio for 2K Marin to work on a sequel. The game began development in November 2007, starting production with a core team of just 8 people, and added an additional 78 people at the peak of the game's development. Bioshock 2's creative director, Jordan Thomas, goes through his first concerns with creating a sequel to Bioshock on the Bioshock 2 podcast, which, can I say, was a huge help in researching the game's development.
The process began with where do you go with this? How do you bring people back to an experience and terrify them and shock them in a way that they're not expecting, but also fulfill the many expectations that they're projecting onto it.
The idea of leaving Rapture was not an option, as the team felt the city and the world of Rapture is what made Bioshock, well, Bioshock. But the challenge was making Rapture feel fresh again, not just for returning players, but for the team that worked on the original game as well. The members of the team who moved over to work on Bioshock 2 were those who had been in the city of Rapture for thousands of hours, so any idea that sounded new and added mystery back into the world was on the table, and from these ideas they would know how much story is left in the tank in the world of Rapture. From these ideas, 2K Marin knew they could make another game set in Rapture, but to make it feel fresh, the team needed to focus on changes to the environment and how the player would participate in the world this time round. Enter the Big Daddy. The Big Daddies were somewhat of a villain in the original game, and we would save the little sisters from them. So Marin knew they had a wealth of story opportunities if they let us, the player, experience their story and how they would explore and progress through the city. And this single change really got the ball rolling in terms of environments and the game's story. The story did go through some major changes throughout the game's development, with the two most significant changes in regards to the Big Sisters and Subject Delta. At a stage in development, the team were tossing around the idea of having a single Big Sister who would hunt the player down, but was scrapped as it removed the feeling of triumph the player would have after defeating her if they knew she would just return. In terms of Subject Delta though, originally he was intended to be the first Big Daddy, but after some story changes, it was far more interesting for him to be the fourth prototype, but the first Big Daddy to successfully be bonded to a little sister. Just over 2 years into development, Bioshock 2 released in February 2010, and critically and commercially did really well yet again, but it wasn't free from many thoughts that it was just more of the same. Some fans going as far to call it Bioshock DLC or Bioshock 1.5. But as I've said, I loved my time with Bioshock 2 back in 2010, so how does it hold up 10 years later? The beginning of Bioshock 2 takes place in 1958, roughly 1 to 2 years before the events of the first game. We are introduced to Subject Delta as he retrieves his little sister Eleanor and go about their business as usual, before Eleanor is captured, and as we fight off the splicers, end up being hit with a hypnosis plasmid that stops us in our tracks as we are introduced to Bioshock 2's main antagonist, Sophia Lamb. Sophia Lamb informs us that our little sister is actually her daughter Eleanor Lamb, and obviously, well, that's a problem. So Sophia forces Subject Delta to remove his helmet, put the pistol up to his head, and pull the trigger, as we see the game resume 10 years later, now after the events of the original game. Delta is revived at a Vita chamber and begins receiving telepathic messages from Eleanor as she is pleading for him to go and save her. And in this game's introduction, we learn that after the events of the first game, with no Ryan or Fontaine, Sophia has taken control of Rapture in their absence. We are reintroduced to Tenenbaum as she explains that Delta must travel across the ruins of Rapture to Fontaine Futuristics, where Eleanor is being held. If we do not reach Eleanor, the bond will stop Delta's heartbeat and eventually kill him, so pretty high stakes. And with the help of Tenenbaum's ally Sinclair, we begin our journey off to reconnect with Eleanor. That really is the main storyline until we reach Eleanor, which means all the additional information we learn from the one-off characters and audio diaries covers a lot of the world building for the game's story. This way of storytelling isn't anything new for the series, as the original Bioshock also did the same thing for about 2/3 of the game. So what I'm going to do is continue going over the main story and then talk about the other means the game tells Rapture's story. Okay, so once we reach Fontaine Futuristics, we see Eleanor in her containment chamber. Lamb is there waiting for us, and to stop Delta, she smothers Eleanor to stop her heartbeat for long enough so that Delta and her bond become severed, as Delta awakens captured and slowly dying. Eleanor takes control of a little sister to suit up and transform herself into a big sister, so that she can break Delta out and escape Rapture. Obviously this doesn't go to plan, as Lamb makes a last-ditch effort to stop the duo as she turns Sinclair into a Big Daddy, stating this is what Delta should have been, and forces us to kill him before detonating bombs as Delta and Eleanor head towards the escape pod. The explosion mortally wounds Delta as we ride the pod to the surface. From here, your choices in regards to saving or harvesting the little sisters and hurting or forgiving the characters along the way will affect the game's ending. My ending was the good ending because I'm a good boy and I can't harvest the little sisters ever. So Eleanor saves Sophia from drowning, and Delta reaches the surface and breathes his last breath in Eleanor's arms, leaving the world better off with the little sisters and Eleanor learning from Delta's actions of kindness and forgiveness. The other endings are much more bleak. Now, as I said, that is the main story of Bioshock 2, and if you aren't paying attention to the game's audio diaries and the character dialogue or the world itself, you are going to be a little disappointed with Bioshock 2's story. There is no big twist or revelation here, but instead what the game's story does well is set up further backstories for the world of Rapture. We learn about what kind of person Sophia Lamb is through the audio diaries, especially in regards to Andrew Ryan's. Learning about the reason she was brought to Rapture, how she used this as a way to begin a cult within the city, becoming a threat to Ryan, ending with her being thrown in jail, and leaving Eleanor with a trusted lieutenant in Grace, who has a truly sad story of her own and hates Delta for having Eleanor, because Eleanor was in Grace's care when a mole within the cult named Stanley sold Eleanor to Fontaine's orphanage, and is the reason she became a little sister. Lamb's plan of turning Eleanor into an all-knowing superhuman using extreme amounts of Adam, which we see the effects of with Gilbert Alexander, a character that really reminded me of the Fallout New Vegas DLC, Old World Blues, as we see him about the environment as a security drone as his insane current self, but talks to us through monitors he pre-recorded, only to finally reach him and find him to be a hideous monster. Even learning more about the Big Daddy program and seeing the effects of Big Daddies who have lost their little sisters, now insane and forever tormented, or the reason people go through the Big Daddy program to begin with.
Ask yourself, Mr. Meltzer, is it better to be summarily executed as an outsider caught within these grounds, or to be united not just with your daughter Cindy, but with the Rapture family as well? The choice is yours. I urge you to accept the Protector program. You will live by her side and remember nothing beyond your love for her.
I wasn't the first to find Rapture, you crazy bitch, and I won't be the last. You do whatever you want to me. As long as I'm with Cindy, I'm a happy man.
Personally though, nothing blew my mind more than seeing the world from the little sister's perspective. It really is like nothing has happened. The city is still functioning, people are normal, until you begin harvesting Adam, and it shows Rapture's true colors. It only adds to the little sister's feeling of innocence and purity, and knowing that the big sisters are just grown-up little sisters, driven more and more insane as time went on, makes their life feel worth saving. You could say Bioshock 2 over-explains or shows too much about the city and world of Rapture, or even that not enough of the story is readily available, leading to people maybe missing some information, but I wouldn't say that. In fact, I still wanted to learn more, and having the information presented through the diaries made exploring the city and its new locales a joy. If I was to nitpick, playing on PC with max FOV can ruin some of the story moments. But that'd be it. Bioshock 2's story was something I remembered being interesting, but I could have never anticipated the joy and pleasure I got from learning more about this world and how fresh the feeling would be of exploring Rapture yet again. Now here's the point where I'd usually start talking about the game's, well, gameplay. But this portion of the video may seem a bit shorter than usual because it is an aspect of Bioshock 2 that is largely the same as the original game. So to avoid repeating myself, I think it's best to talk about what Bioshock 2 improves and changes from the original game's formula. We see a lot of the same plasmids, weapons, enemy types, tonics to change your playstyle, upgrade machines you really have to look for, but what Bioshock 2 does in regards to gameplay is just refine these mechanics to make them feel as solid as possible. Such as, instead of swapping between plasmids and weapons, we get to dual wield, allowing us to more easily combo attacks together and speed up the game's combat. No more pipe minigames. Thank God. Instead, we have a reaction-based meter gauge that, if you're good enough, can be used to gain access to more items upon completion. We get to explore the waters outside the city walls this time round, and this acts as a great break in terms of a change to the environment and as a break from gameplay. It's just an aspect of the series that was a logical step forward when playing as a Big Daddy. However, the game's biggest changes are in regards to the little sisters. Again, we are fighting Big Daddies to save the little sisters, but to gather more Adam, you will need to protect them whilst they gather more from dead bodies, effectively acting as a wave mode of sorts, and these can be tough. With the increase to our attack speed, the logical change is the increase to enemies as well, and whilst this is a mechanic you can avoid, if you want to get the most Adam possible, it is a must and acts as a great source of challenge. But after you save or harvest all the little sisters in an area is when the game's true threats are coming with the big sisters. Now, if you don't save or harvest all the little sisters, well, you won't face these guys except for a couple of times, which sort of sucks, but they are no joke. The big sisters move incredibly quickly, have access to plasmids, do big damage, and can restore health from splices. But you get to choose where you fight them depending on where you drop off the last little sister in the area. So it adds a strategy element if you've hacked equipment in an area, so you have support, and these are a worthy threat that you will need help with. Really, that's the gameplay loop without me repeating myself from the first video. Bioshock 2's gameplay doesn't change a lot from Bioshock. It just acts as a way to improve the general flow, and for me, that's enough. If it ain't broke, just tweak it. It's still the same Bioshock experience you know and love, just with some improvements. Minerva's Den is Bioshock 2's story-based expansion set during the events of the main game, just in yet another section of Rapture. We play as a reactivated Alpha Series Big Daddy, Subject Sigma, as we are heading towards Minerva's Den before we hear a voice over the loudspeaker to detonate the tunnel to stop us from reaching the Thinker. Luckily, we're a Big Daddy, so this just knocks us out for a little bit before we regain consciousness and are contacted by a man called Porter. Porter wants us to reach his supercomputer, the Thinker, to retrieve its blueprints so that he can recreate the computer on the surface. Whilst in Minerva's Den, we hear our antagonist for this story in Porter's former colleague, Reed Wall, who has gone insane from splicing and his obsession with the Thinker. Now again, the main story just has this central plot of reaching the Thinker, and we complete tasks along the way, all in the hopes of reaching the computer. And again, the story is primarily told through the game's environments and audio diaries, but the stories told this time round are absolutely engaging, especially in regards to Porter programming the Thinker. Porter was using the Thinker as a means of having a conversation with his dead wife by using old audio recordings of the two talking to learn more about her. And Porter is someone you truly feel empathetic for, because whilst we never meet him in person, he is someone you can feel his pain through these diary entries.
Continuing input of audio data into the Thinker's database. Subject, Pearl Porter.
I want to tell the recorder how we met, Milton.
Okay, sure.
I was working in my family's diner. School was starting for the fall. And one morning, in walks this college boy. Clean cut. First thing I noticed was his eyes. He sat down and ordered bacon, eggs, and coffee. He was shy, but we talked a little off and on. He came in every single morning for breakfast and ordered the same thing. I told my mama, that boy must really love your cooking. She said, he isn't coming in for the food, honey. He's coming in for you. A year later, we were married.
We also learn why Reed wanted to use the Thinker, as he wanted to use the computer to predict anything, as he constantly lets us know that everything we are doing has been predicted by the Thinker already.
How does it feel to know that your grand purpose is foretold by a machine? The numbers know already what will happen. As I tell you this, will it affect the outcome? I am not so much holding my breath.
Once we reach the Thinker, we have our confrontation with Reed and inevitably end him before retrieving the computer's programming code, and it's here the story takes a turn. Sigma is Porter. The Thinker was emulating Porter's voice as a way to guide Porter back to the surface, as Porter had been sent to jail by Andrew Ryan, and whilst in there was enrolled in the Protector program, becoming a Big Daddy. Now, having completed his mission, Porter and Tenenbaum return to the surface, and in an epilogue, we learn that Tenenbaum had returned Porter to his normal self after administering a cure she had been working on. The story for Minerva's Den is brilliant. Like in the original Bioshock story, it throws a twist at you that I didn't see coming until the very end, and it was brilliant. You become suspect of Porter in the beginning as you never see him, but I never expected to be him. The Thinker is such an intriguing plot device, and learning about the two colleagues' different uses for the machine, one for power reasons and the other for personal reasons, was captivating. The highlight is Porter's story with his dead wife. It's a heartbreaking story of processing grief, even having Porter reject it once it successfully recreates his wife's voice.
I believe I'm done feeding audio recordings and personal anecdotes to the Thinker. I am set to test the personality duplication function. Target personality, Pearl Porter. Thinker, are you ready?
Yes, Milton.
Starting test. Hello, Pearl.
Hello, Milton.
How have you been?
Just wonderful, Milton. I've missed you, though. It's been so long.
Pearl, No, this isn't right. It isn't her. Thinker, stop the test.
But what's the matter, Milton?
Oh, God.
Don't you still love me?
Oh, God, I said end function, Thinker. Now!
I could have never anticipated Minerva's Den to be such an enthralling experience, but it may be a personal favourite of mine. I couldn't get enough. In terms of gameplay, again, it basically plays like Bioshock 2, with new additions like the laser and the gravity well plasmid, which are great inclusions and change up the gameplay enough to feel different. But the biggest change is the game's progression. This is a 2 to 3 hour long experience, yet we start off with just the drill, and because of this, the pace at which we acquire new weapons, plasmids and upgrades is substantially quicker and honestly a little more engaging. It all just flows really well and was a great conclusion to my Bioshock 2 experience. Bioshock 2 still holds up today. I think I've made that pretty clear at this point. I honestly don't understand some people's hate or disappointment with this game. Yes, it is more of the same in some regards, but that's okay. Bioshock 2 questions and answers so many things about the world of Rapture. Playing from the perspective of a Big Daddy only adds more depth into what is now such an iconic character. You feel like a true protector. The game's new locations, audio diaries, exploring the waters, and improvements to gameplay, not to mention an expansion that I recommend everyone go out and play. Bioshock 2 just reaffirms for me that Bioshock is a series and world that is one of my favorites in gaming. And 10 years later, Bioshock 2 is still very much worth playing today.